Hey folks, Rob here. We're going to be looking at my upcoming campaign, Solitaire Historical, for the Red Factories game. So if you own Red Factories, it came up from MMP about, 5 years ago or so. It's going to encompass all four map sheets. So you can see it's going to be a rather huge setup. You can see I've already set up the top. And basically, right from around this area here south is actually the Red October maps, and from this area north is the Red Barricades maps. Altogether, it makes up Red Factories. So I've already set up the enemy units, and the general. I just want to go over the general concept of what's going to happen with this campaign game. So first of all, let's look at some of the rules I'm playing with. So this is a Word doc I got on the go. Right now we have 30 days planned, so 17 October to 15 November. Much like the X tag scenario, or I should say campaign game in Red Factories, we're going to keep the map groups and reinforcement groups as relatively separate for purposes of entry and rally or reinforcement group purchases. Once they're on the map, then of course we can have free fire zones between the two areas, but generally we're going to try and keep them separate in accordance with Red Factories. Now, if you looked at Red Factories, the historical die roll modifier chart is quite extensive for barricades because it came out already, and less so for the Red October. So there's some gaps. Now, for basically 1 to 10 November in Red October, there's no historical die roll modifier, so we're going to use the existing one that's for Red Barricades. So should transfer over. And this southern part anyways, during this time it was a bit of a lull as they were reorganizing themselves, getting ready for the Hubertus push. So 1 to 10 November, there should not be much going on. Generally speaking, we're going to be following the Red Factories campaign game 3. And we start parameters are actually in accordance with campaign game 1. So we're going to be using a lot of those SSRs with some exceptions. Because the enemy is being played by the SASL system, we're going to have enemy artillery strike potential. This happens at the beginning of every prep fire phase where you make a random event roll specifically for artillery strike, and if you get one comes down. So we're going to be using the enemy artillery strike for the OBA. Again, friendly units will be limited to a maximum of 2 per map group, so that's fine. So the most I could have on the whole thing would be 4. And when it comes to self-rally, again, SASL lets you rally 2 units, self-rally, and because of given the map size, that was actually increased 2 for face-to-face play, so you double that, it's going to be 4 self-rallies with Solitaire, which means it's going to be a total of 8 once 23 October 42 comes in, and that's when the southern map sets are going to be in play. So as we said, it's generally in accordance with the Red Factories campaign game 1, again for setup, and we're going to be using some variants. So first of all, there's the Leaflet House Rules to be used for both map groups. Now that, if you're unaware, this is on Game Squad is a link, and there's also, it's basically from the Swedish ASL community. They have their own forums where you can go and download this. I'll have the links all down in the comments or description down below. Basically, what they've done is the game itself is rather historically been unbalanced. Germans must continuously attack because you must get a 2-to-1 attrition rate because the Russians can just sit there and soak up casualties. And then at some point, when the Germans are exhausted, the Russians come back. So it's really not, I don't want to use the word fair for the Germans, but it's much more difficult and probably game-wise is not fun to play at that point. Not that you want to keep hammering on the Russians, but at the same time, there's a lot of errors, you could say, that were developed. So they come up with this Red Barricades Game 3 Leaflet House Rules. This is actually encompassing 3 campaign games. So the first is the campaign game 3, the one that we're going to be doing. Then there's the Op Hubertus campaign game 2. And then there's the Red October campaign game X tag. So We're just going to be using most of the rules that apply. Again, they're all sequential, so when you get into Red Barricades Campaign Game 2, there's going to be some other additions as well. So obviously this was not designed for solitaire play, so I'm going to have to go through and adjust accordingly. And I've already made some notes that we're going to be doing. So um, we'll get into those in a second. Other things we're going to use, obviously, is the Red Barricades Solitaire ASL. And again, these are written up by Jörgen Holmquist, and once more available on the ASL Facebook group. Again, I'll have the link down below, or I'll probably just put it in the my OneDrive and show you guys, because I'm also going to share the setup map if for whatever reason you want to play along with this ginormous undertaking. So this is a set of solitaire rules for Red Barricades. Again, much like Tom Warren's Valor of the Guards, it all has the same source that came out in the ASL Journal 1 a long time ago, and they've rejigged it and updated it, I suppose, and made it more universal. So if you're familiar with Valor of the Guards, Solitaire, this is roughly the same way. It starts off with modifications to the rules, modification to the Solitaire rules, and then it gets into things like campaign game setup. So this is what we use for setup. We use campaign game 1 start, which basically means that the Germans start off with U1 through A9 as a friendly board entry hex, and units are placed within 2 hexes of any board entry hex. Enemy units, excuse me, are placed within 2 hexes to a maximum of 7 hexes away from every entry point in these different locations. Now, the parameters we use for setup, unlike your normal solitaire, are different because given the nature of the terrain. So we use A9E here, this built-up map suspect placement, and again, it's more extensive than what you find in the solitaire rules. You have cellars, you have roofs, that kind of thing. So that's basically the enemy setup. And other rules I'm going to be using. I'm giving myself a limitation that, again, there's this line here which separates the Red Barricades from Red October. And historically, or I should say in the campaign, it wasn't until 23 October that this second front, if you want to call it that, opened up south. So I'm going to give myself a limitation where I cannot exploit south of this hex row here. And I'm basically going to limit my actions for those first 6 days, 7 days to the northern sector. Now, one thing I'm going to be trying to do as a plan, if I want to, I'll cover the plan later. So we want to keep our entry south of the map board off until 23 October, and that's when we can start commencing that second front, as I said. So we're going to, in the meantime, we're going to try and keep the 2 map sets separate while conducting any actions on them. Again, once reinforcements have entered on the respective map groups, then they can start firing in between each other, supporting each other, etc. And then one of the last points I'm going to make is the Leaflet House Rules, number 22, is a fanatic building location, much like Valor of the Guards, where you can have those NKVD strong points or fanatic strong points, because typically it's the factories that are your fanatic locations, and there's several buildings which are not factories, and therefore they would not qualify for the fanatic bonus. However, they've written up in the rules some modifications to that effect. Basically, you have right here fanatic building nest, and there are 1 or 2 locations, actually there's 2 per map group that will become automatic fanatic buildings the minute that unit's activated in them. And so, yeah. All right, and then let's talk about the Leaflet House Rules a little bit more in depth. So if you've never seen them, this is basically the summary. All right, so there's no recon. Recon is kind of a waste, especially when you're face to face. All you're doing is strip and concealment, which I guess makes it a little easier to shoot. But generally speaking, you already know what the setup is. So There's no heavy machine guns for the German rifle companies, which is one of the errors that they've realized in 30 years of play, because Red Barricades came out in the early 90s. And when you can have up to 14 companies, that's 14 heavy machine guns that the Russians typically will probably not have. When you stack a medium and a heavy machine gun with two 4.67s, you're going to have 20 firepower, and usually you're going to throw a neg leader in there. So it's very overpowering. So for the Germans, because they can generate so much as well, they can generate so many leaders. So again, no recon, no rifle company HMG. They're going to get replaced with a second light, which is probably more fitting. There's limited battle hardening between scenarios, so the leader generation charts stop at 9.2 is the highest you can get. So the only way to get a 10 leader is through battle hardening while playing. You will not be able to battle harden your leaders. The only squads you can battle harden are the fanatic type and the one for each hero that's sacrificed in the course of it. There's also no night attacks. Now, typically the Russians historically were, in terms of the game, were conducting all their attacks at night. In reality, according to those guys, that didn't really happen as much. Normally at nighttime is when the reinforcements were rolling in from across the Volga. Yes, there was skirmishes and some fighting, but in general, I don't think too many nations would carry on night attacks without the significant use of star shells and all the rest of it. So when you're fighting in that kind of dense terrain, it's probably not very effective. You're stumbling and knocking into each other, especially when there's no moon and overcast. So the Leaflet House Rules eliminate any night attacks, which means that the Russians will be counterattacking during the day. Again, we're going to see how that plays out. I've never played barricades with this house rules, so it's going to be interesting to see how that changes things. And in fact, the last time I played Red Barricades was actually around 94, 95. Dave and I had a couple of scenarios, never finished it, but we started off one of the campaigns. And there's also going to be mandatory idle days. Now, again, historically in the game, players know that you must have a certain level of attrition on the Russians if you want to hope of winning. And therefore the German would attack, 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 when historically in real life that didn't happen. There was often periods of lull while they reorganize themselves, resupply, or they're just plain exhausted and you need that kind of downtime. So there's going to be mandatory idle days sprinkled throughout the campaign. The only two changes I'm making so far to the Leaflet House rules are gutted buildings and factories. Now, for whatever reason, a gutted building, given all the rubble on the ground, etc., costs you 3 move to enter that location. In the Leaflet House rules, they've eliminated that, but I'm going to bring it back. So it's going to cost 3 to move into a gutted building, because that's in line with what Battle of the Guards does. And it kind of makes sense anyways, because you would have a lot of rubble strewn around the ground from a gutted building, as well as a train inside the building. And that kind of reasoning is why I'm going to be bringing it back. Secondly, for offboard artillery, they have their own version of offboard artillery rules. Basically, the second red chit cannot be removed, or it will only be removed if you have at least 2 black chits in play. Which means you're going to get at least 2 fire missions before you permanently lose your battery access. I'm going to use the Plever rule, which basically means that if you draw a red card, it goes back into the pile and you add another red card. So you're never going to potentially run out of OBA. You just have more red cards that you're going to have to worry about drawing for every failed mission. So this will ensure that there will always be some kind of artillery on the friendly side. When it comes to the Red Barricades Solitaire ASL, which we'll look at a second again, there are modified generation tables. So if you saw the down here, you have Maltese, for example. Now, again, I'm not sure why, but in the Leaflet House rules, they removed the Maltese, so that's not going to exist. So if I roll a 3, I'll probably just swap it out with an MMG. And then we're going to be switching up the 127 crews in accordance with the Leaflet House rules, where they're all replaced with 228. So Again, one of the things with the Leaflet House rules is there's no 127 crews for weapons. It's always going to be a 228. Now, I guess we should look at the Leaflet House rules in more detail, just so you have a rough idea. Again, these will be all linked below so you can follow along. So more summaries, I suppose. Victory conditions are NA for scenarios. It's winning the campaign, yes or no. So you don't have to worry about achieving a certain level of factory building locations in order for the Germans to win. So that's out the window. It's just winning the whole game. Night assault is NA, as we said. Every reinforcement group for these infantry platoons, companies, armor platoons, and gun batteries are always received at full strength, never deployed. It sucks when you start off a campaign and you've already got two lightly depleted companies. It almost makes you want to just cancel that campaign and try again until you get a good result. So it makes sense this way that you're not stressing over having incomplete numbers, and therefore each of those units is going to be coming in full strength. Again, I've never played with these rule sets, so I have no idea how this affects balance. This overall Leaflet House rules is I think it's fairly well considered in the ASL community, especially on Game Squad forum, where they've talked about it in the past. Obviously, some people like more traditional games, but a lot of people are liking the changes that they made and think they're a good addition. So again, MMC battle hardening is typically NA. The only way you'll be able to battle harden your troops is to sacrifice heroes. Now, again, the reason why is because given the attrition rate and the CVP you're accumulating, you're probably going to be getting at least 5 squads every turn. Every scenario that can battle harden, which is leaves you a lot of 468 at the end of the day for the Germans, and probably not the best overall for balance wise. Booby traps are always going to be level C, can never be increased. So, which basically means if I roll a 12 for any task check, then I'll be hit with a booby trap. Gutted buildings, again, this is where they reduce it to the normal cost as before being gutted, but I'm going to negate this rule and I'm going to bring back the 3 movement factors to enter a gutted building. Stuka Ace, this is interesting. They've changed some of the pricing as well. And you can have an option for bringing in a Stuka Ace, much like an armor leader. And I think the costs are the same. It's just they define what you get for your price. So because it's a variable turn of entry, you don't know how many are going to be arriving each turn. If you get 3 Stukas with bombs, it costs you 1. If you get 4 with bombs, then you get a 2 CPP and you get a -2 on your early entry. So you could feasibly enter turn 1 or 2. Stuka Ace just improves your chance of a sighting attack and better chance of getting a hit. Offboard artillery we already talked about. One interesting thing which affected my setup, because I set up and then I looked at this set of rules that I want to play in. So when it comes to bombardment and not bombardment, blanking on it, barrage. When it comes to barrage, the all hexes must have a north-south hex grain alignment. That works for the Russians as well as for the Germans. So if I want to bring in a barrage, I have to go from north to south. So when I set up my initial plan, I had a barrage coming in this way, which I was going to use smoke, and then I have a barrage this way. So I basically jigged around my offboard observer, and I'm only going to use the 1 barrage. So back to the house rules. What do we got? AFVs. Again, this basically forces you to try and repair your weapons. Sometimes you would not do this because the penalties are too much. You're probably going to fail, which means you're going to lose that armor. So if you don't roll, you don't have to worry about failing. So this is going to ensure that you always attempt to repair your weapons. Now, when it comes to leaders, again, here we go with battle hardening. The only way to get 10-2, 10-3s is battle hardening in the course of a game. You will not be able to, generally speaking, battle harden your leaders with these exceptions. When it comes to wounded leaders, I think this is the same. To be honest, I can't remember. On a die roll of 1, you keep your leader in an unwounded state. Otherwise, they've been evacuated. So I think normally if it's a 1, you keep it in a wounded state. And if it's 2 or more, they're dead. In this case, if you roll a 1, you can retain it unwounded. So you slap a bandage on it and he's back in action. Commissars, again, because the system is going to be played by the solitaire rules, there's no way to generate. You have to randomly roll to see if you get a commissar. So this rule here may not apply. I'm not sure how to work it in. Remember, A+1 commissars came in with Battle of the Guards. So while all your commissars are going to be replaced come 1 November, then you still have to. I have to find some way to bring in the 8-1s. So I may tweak around with this one as we go. German assault engineers have an ELR of 5, can't be disrupted, and underscored morale. However, they've only have a smoke exponent of 3, not 5, which probably gets ridiculous. And they only get 3 DC, not 5 to start with. Now, this is a company of engineers, typically 8 squads. So again, a lot of DCs, a lot of support weapons, and a lot of leaders. And this set of rules designed to limit that. Again, militia companies for the Russians, we're not going to worry about that. Here's some weapon adjustments. So again, MAL-Ps are not going to be in play. When it comes to heavy weapon platoons, again, the 127s will be swapped out with a 228. And what's the other good one? Light mortars will lose their acquisition between fire phases, so you won't be able to continuously get that -2 acquisition. And then, yeah, that's all good there. Still hidden units doesn't apply because, again, enemies played by the system. CPP replenishment, each side makes a die roll. Obviously, I don't make one for the Russian enemy because it'll be taken care of by the system, so it would just be the 1. And this is the HMG that's gone from each German rifle company and it's replaced with another LMG. So your Sturm companies, 548s, and your 467 rifle companies will only have one medium and 2 lights, along with 1 ATR and 1 mortar. We discussed the Fanatic building nest. So again, much like Valor of the Guards, this identifies a couple of buildings to be special status. So in our case, we're going to be using CC10, the Roadhouse. This is where Luidnikov's 138 headquarters were. Historically, never actually conquered by the Germans. So we decided, what the hell, let's make that one a Fanatic strong point the minute one of these units gets activated in here. And then the Commissar House as well. Again, this was a very difficult building for the Germans to take, which they eventually did. But again, at this point, they were nearly exhausted and they had to pull back. So to replicate those kinds of Fanatic buildings, again, because typically it's only factories that give you the Fanatic bonus, we're going to add in those special kind of houses. ELR and idle requirements. So I'm actually struggling to understand this experience level rating. I don't know where they get this math from. If they do a 9 campaign game day, their ELR drops from 4 down to 3. If they do a 1-day campaign game day, then it drops down to 2. I'm not sure how that math works out. I'm not sure where. The ELR is modified inversely by the side's positive historical DRM for the current campaign game day. So if we look at the historical modifier, maybe that'll explain it to me. So this is what we're talking about down here. You have the Barricades circle die roll modifier. So I guess you start off with an ELR of 4. So if it's a minus, it doesn't change. If it's a positive, in this case here, for example, 29, it would be a 3. That would be a 3. This would be a 2. I think that's what they're talking about, but again, I'm not really sure. When it comes to the Russian ELR, again, because it's handled by the system, I guess I'm going to have to do the same thing with them. Again, I'm really not sure how this all plays in. The one thing I do know is the idle requirements. This means you must have at least 1 idle day in between major events. So We have 17 October to 22 October. There's got to be at least one day there, 23 to 28, etc. Which kind of makes sense. It forces you to have an idle day rather than just attack, attack, attack. Because again, attacking is more or less just gaming the system because it's in your best interest to keep attriting the Russians down because the minute you stop, they're going to reinforce with companies and then it just makes your job harder. So the German player is forced to continuously attack. Um, this one here again is not going to really apply because we have the system taking care of the enemy side. So we're going to see how that one plays in. Stug Bees, this is a bit of a difference here. They've kept the cost at 5 for the first one, and the second one is down to 2. I assume this means that you're going to want to use them because historically those Stugs were in the combat. And then lastly, we got the leader determination, which once more is based off of the, where is it? We have the German leader table here. So again, the only way we get a 929180 company is to have a Pioneer or Sturm company. Once you start buying a lot of rifle companies, the leadership starts to dwindle in quality. And again, the only way to get a 10-2 or 10-3 is through battle hardening while in play. I think that's enough for the Leaflet House Rules. Again, we're going to use 1 to 28 definitely. I have to figure out how the rest of these are going to work into the campaign. And again, when it comes down to X-Tag, when we start dealing with the southern map set, we'll have to see how that plays in as well. Like it's already got some units here, but when we get down to opening up that side of the map, that's when we'll look at those other rules. All right, so lastly, let's look at the solitaire rules, and then we'll go over the game plan. So again, these are just changes to the rules as well as the solitaire rules. Most of that's self-explanatory. Here we talk about enemy OBA. So again, this is handled by conducting a random event during each Russian fire phase. So in their prep fire or their defensive fire, I'll make a die roll. If it is a artillery strike RE, then we'll carry that out. Again, you can only have a maximum of 2 different kinds of FFE. So if I generate more, then they can only be one of those 2 types. When it comes to the campaign game proper, again, we have our setup. So this here is going to be what we use for subsequent setups after the first scenario is done, where the Russians automatically have an idle chit and the Germans have an attack chit. So when we get to subsequent missions, this is what we're going to use for setup. As it is, we have different rules for activation from what would be in the solitaire rules. Again, we ignore the city board modifiers. All we have is hold attitude -1 in a VPO location, which again is all stone. Rubble and buildings are all VPO locations. If we're in advanced attitude, not applicable this turn. And well, I shouldn't say that. One of the other things I'm going to do, because I think it's going to be more accurate, is every Russian movement phase, I'm going to be conducting an RE roll, just like for the artillery strike. And if there's a counterattack RE for 34-35 or 44-45, then I'll make a local Russian counterattack. So rather than just sitting waiting for me to pick them up and disperse them or kill them, there's a chance that some of these may turn into advanced attitude and take back ground. So I always have to be aware of the potential for a Russian counterattack. So I think it's more reasonable, and it gives the AI a bit more life than normally would, because again, I can gaming the system, I can only activate what I want to activate, deal with it, and then move on. And again, it's not really historic. So we're going to let the enemy have a chance of getting a local counterattack. We'll see how that goes. What else we got in the Red Barricade rules? So yeah, all stone hexes are VPO locations, including stone rubble. And then we have our setup. So again, like I said, this is the setup for the Russian enemy. Essentially, we have two buildings that become strong points, the Red House and the Commissar House. They become strong points, and then the suspects are placed according to Solitaire Rules, Chapter S 4.1a, which includes rooftop, debris, shell holes, and orchards. And any hex is 7 to 2 away from allowed German entry hexes. So all suspects are placed in this manner, begin the scenario and hold attitude. And then we have reserve, which is basically a roll on the built up area. And if it's not ground level, then there is none. So you'll see there's plenty of gaps. Like here's a nice big gap because there's no buildings. And for reserve purposes, we don't put anything down in debris. Now, again, a limitation of the system is I can game it. I'm not going to. So whenever possible, I'm going to try and avoid pushing into the reserve unless it's just too juicy of an opportunity, and I think it's reasonable. Like I said in my solitaire rules, don't be afraid to overrule the rule if you think it's in the best interest of the unit, and that kind of works both ways. So what else we got in the rules? And then we have setup. So again, night assaults are not going to happen. So we're just going to make it a daytime Russian assault. We'll make sure that they'll get it. They still have to worry about their maximum number of assaults, which I believe is 8. I think they only have 8 attacks in the course of the 30-day campaign. One thing I should mention is that these Red Barricades Solitaire ASL was written before Red Factories came out. So some of this does not apply to the Red October, but we're going to make it fit. So again, once I open up that second front, I'll be doing the same kind of setup using the same rules as I did for the North map group for the Southern map group. So there's going to be a wall of 6 black suspects in the first 2 to 7 rows. All right, so the tables I think are again self-explanatory. I've got my purchases. So with the Germans at start get 15 CPP, so I bought 2 rifle companies which have to enter on turn 2 or later. So they're in the entering right now on the organizer. So I've got a Sturm company here, and I got a rifle company here, and then I got 3 Panzer 3Ls as well, and an offboard observer sitting here with this 80mm mortar OBA. So my plan is a push on 2 fronts. I'm going to clear off this area with my Sturm company. I'm going to try and eradicate all this with my rifle company, but again, I do have to worry about these 2 guys up here on top of the roof. Some of these lines of sight are going to be obscured. Obviously, these 2 in the cellar will not see shit. And I'm going to have to be careful about local counterattacks. So I'm going to pop in a fire base between these 2 locations, and that should help me deal with most of this and opening it up for these guys. Now on the second turn, depending on how it all happens, I'll be bringing in these 2 rifle companies either on the west flank or through the north flank, maybe into this area to help clear it up. So I've got several scouts whose sole purpose is to activate suspect counters, and hopefully they do a bang-up job before they die. I think I got 5 of them, yeah. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scouts, and then I stuck one with a mortar back here. I'm not sure how that 50 mortar is going to do in built-up areas. It's going to suck. On the other hand, high rate of fire and troops sitting on top of roofs are going to be easy to hit. Not so much with the +1 for the shell hole for these guys here. But again, we'll play that as we go. Parameters. So enemy gets an RE, a roll on the table. Again, this is all in the solitaire rules. Where are we? Right here. So I need to purchase CPP as a friendly to get this, so I'm not going to waste the points. And the enemy always will have some kind of random event. I rolled really well for the Russians, so they had a 5, 6, 7, which means if I roll that during a Russian wind change die roll, they'll be getting a random event. So it's chances are there's probably going to be a lot of Russians coming on, or different events are going to be happening. Their activation is a 3. So again, if you look at the modifiers, we have a -1 for being in a hold attitude in stone. And second one doesn't apply. Third one doesn't apply. And this one applies if they're adjacent to a factory. So most of these guys here will be at a -1, which means a 4 or less. But all these guys here are going to be basically a 3 or less. So 50-50 chance of activating it, which is not too bad. I guess I like those odds. It's going to be October, obviously, 17th, and the weather is clear, and we have no wind at start. Now we have moderate ECs, so not much chance of burning any of this stuff. And I've only got an 80mm mortar. I don't have my flamethrowers yet for my Pioneers. I'll bring those on in the second day. Right now, I just wanted a lot of troops so I can fill this map with blue. They start with an ELR of 3 for the Russians, 4 for the Germans. And again, I got to figure out how that rule applies, what they were talking about with ELR adjustment, using the modifier positively. Again, we'll see how that goes. So some days I might have a 2 ELR for the Germans, and some days I might have a 4. I guess that goes back and forth. Kind of makes sense, I think. But again, I got to figure that out, how that rule works. Snipers are 3 and 5 respectively, so it's not that bad. Again, 5 is awful high. And when you're coupled with the booby trap level C, which they have, then it's going to be... I could see a few snipers coming into play. Oh, that reminds me, I haven't put any snipers down. So let's do that quickly. I always forget snipers. Now, these have to be, I believe, 15 hexes apart. So let's put one here. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So let's put one in R2. Now the same with the Germans. So let's put one here in D10. Now remember, suspects are black or any solitaire suspect counters are not considered valid target for sniper. So until I activate something, these are really not going to be doing too much. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Somewhere in here, eh? Let's put you here. All right, so I put my snipers down belatedly, but they are down. Again, so what is my plan? Now, I have to secure the north front. So once I move into these locations, I'm going to have to start dwindling these guys away. Again, depending on how that all goes, will determine where my reinforcements come on in turn 2. I'm going to use Armored Assault on these guys here to come into these 2 hexes, and they'll start clearing off this. My Scout's going to bust Concealment here, here, and over here. Try and eliminate these as much as possible. Hopefully they turn out to be nothing. Otherwise, I'm going to be fighting when I come right on board. I'll be able to enter concealed, except for my half squads. Eventually, they're going to be losing their concealment, and then they'll be getting killed. Now, my AFV, because they must take their own command die rolls, this armor leader could influence this one because he's crew exposed, but this guy here is on his own. I'm setting him up crew exposed and in motion, which is going to be a -2 to the 8, which means a 10 or less, and they'll be able to move. I've also organized my units such that my highest leader, in this case 9-1 in the north, if he passes, which I hope, as he needs a 10 or less, these guys will be in command. These guys will, and anybody within 2 of him will be in command, which means this guy passing and most of my guys here should be in command. The exception, of course, will be the half squad. And the same goes for my Sturm company. I got a 9-1 here, so if he's in command, this 8-0 will be in command, which means these units down here will also be in command. So everything should be able to move as I intend. Again, we'll see how that goes. My first roll is a boxcars. I may just call that a day and try again another day. Panic doesn't apply to offboard observers, and so I don't have to worry about him panicking. He will be able to drop his smoke barrage in this location here. I had to pick my pre-registered hexes prior to the oh, where's this other one? I had to pick my pre-registered hex prior to the setup, so I didn't know where he was going to set up. So my original plan was to um, put a barrage this way and a barrage this way, but then with the rules for house, the Leaflet House Rules, I need a north-south orientation. So I got rid of this one. I changed my pre-registered hex to K6, and I'm going to keep this one here as smoke. So marginally effective. Again, I'll be able to obscure these guys, so I should be able to deal with this without fear of being attacked. Up here in the north, it's going to be a turkey shoot for the Germans coming in. There's really not a lot for them to get to. I must worry about having routes off board. Now, there is a chance for units that come off board to routes. I'm trying to remember where I saw it. But there's a chance if you end up routing off board where you actually don't get destroyed. You can actually, at any rate, I'll have to figure that out. But I'm going to be running out of places to route to. Good thing I'll have my vehicles, so I won't have to route for being an open. They will be covered. This guy here will be interesting. But it's only going to be a half squad with the mortar, and he'll be coming on last. These two guys will be in the rubble, which is fine. And again, my plan is to clear this out as much as possible, clear this out as much as possible, and then my reinforcement group can deal with this Schmoslin center. If my northern battle group can reach the manufacturing hall, it'll be great. I'm not overly confident they could, but again, we'll see what the activation looks like. My eastern, or I should say western group, if they can get to this warehouse and these set of houses here by the end of the scenario, they'll be in a good spot to reinforce my pioneers becoming in my second day as I try and actually enter the foundry hall. So that's my rough plan. And yeah, I think that's about it I can cover. I think I've covered everything. This is more or less just a basic introduction of what I'm doing and what it looks like. So the last thing I'll discuss then is my purchases. So this is the purchase table. This is what I'm entitled to according to campaign game 1 start. And again, these are my two purchases I made where I got 2 rifle companies coming in as reinforcements. Turn to I rolled really well for the leaders. Now, this one here was a 10-2. So, again, once I brought in the Leaflet House Rules, I swapped this out. I think it's a 9-1 and a 7-0, or 9-2. And a... Oops, don't know how to type. I think it's a 9-2 and a 7-0. That is my Sturm company. 8091 and a 92. There we go. So I had to change that from there. And I've also rolled an armor leader on my my Panzer IIIs. Again, I use the new charts that come with the Leaflet House Rules. And so I do have a lot of good leadership to start off the day. Yeah, I think that's it. So we've got the adjusted reinforcement charts that I'll be using once more. The Russians will be played by the system, so I don't have to worry about that. But these are some of the adjusted CPP costs, as well as maximums and such. Remember, this is not written for the Red October map set, so I'm probably going to have to use the same thing, maybe make it up. Although this is the X tag one, but again, you know, I can't have only 8 companies for that late in the day. We'll see how it goes. So I've never played Leaflet House Rules. I've never finished a game of Red Barricades, and the last time I played Red Barricades was 95. And what happened then? I made some. I stupidly moved 3 pioneers and a 9-1 leader, I think it was, fully kitted out. I think I moved him into this building, didn't Dave have a set DC and blew it up, killed my whole unit. Very demoralizing. I think after that I threw the towel in because it was just killed my morale. I failed my PMC, and yeah, it was kind of funny. So I don't have to worry about that too much with the solitaire rules. Again, you can game the system to a point. Um, we'll see see if that kind of thing happens again. Who knows? Any one of these suspects could be a KV1, could be a crew with a support weapon, or could be two squads. So I really have no idea what I'm facing. I'm going to have to keep up a fairly good amount of attrition so I can get the modifiers when it comes to reinforcements. But I also have to be aware that the Russian enemy will always be reinforced at full strength. So as I move my way down the map, the enemy's really not going to be whittled down, defeated in any way. I may be. So again, I'll have to take idle days, which I'll be able to recoup, hopefully, and we'll see how that goes. So again, this is a fairly short video. Well, relatively, I guess. We've been going for 47 minutes. I probably won't whittle this down too much, but I wanted to give you some lowdown on what's going to happen when we go live. So I was supposed to do this last night, but I decided I'll just do a video, put that up, and then I'll start live Monday tomorrow. So when you see this, it'll be tonight. So yeah, the next day I should be going live at 7 o'clock on the 11th and Eastern time, and we'll see how it goes. So yeah, follow along. Again, I'll have some links in the description down below. Feel free to follow along if you want in your own Vassal game. And yeah, we'll see you guys next video. Bye.